आवाज आ रही ना, चेक कर लियो। Hello all, good evening to all of you and welcome to this live session of budget and economic survey. I am going to discuss both. Now before I start this session, I just first want to tell you that about the relevance of this budget and economic services, and before I go into the details of what are the various clauses, provisions in this year's budget and survey, I also want to tell to all my dear students who are presently watching that what is the significance of these documents and how much these documents are relevant for UPSC exam and how should they study these two documents, because these two things, that how students should refer or study these documents, is much more important than attending this class. So you must understand these things, because I have seen, this is my experience, that in the last so many years, whenever budget and economic survey is presented, students will be too much excited about these two documents, and then they end up learning not very important things or wasting a lot of time in these two things. And as I have already told you that completing your syllabus of full economy, reading the book, following day-to-day updates is much more relevant than this budget and economic survey. Of course, this is a Government of India document and it's a quite important one, but you all, the student fraternity, must understand that what should be taken out of these two documents, what is relevant out of it, because Government Ministry of Finance does not publish these documents for UPSC students, no, but yes, as it is a Government of India document and certain things are quite relevant for you. Now if you will ask how much, so out of all these documents, I will say that 10% of the things are relevant, and questions are also asked very less, but yes, there are questions in prelims also and mains also from budget and economic survey. Now in this class, I will be telling you that what things or what you should look in these documents so that it can help you in the UPSC exam, and how you can read about these two documents. So let's first start with the budget. As you all know that budget gives it's basically the annual financial statement which tells about that where government is going to spend in the future, what will be the expenditure and what will be the receipts. Now the various departmental expenditures, ministry expenditure, the data is not at all relevant for you. This is the first thing. Second, this budget, when the finance minister presents the budget of the next financial year, this has also become a time, the day, that she also announces the important things that the government is going to do for the next 1 year, or what will be the future strategy for economy by the government. So it's not just the budget, it just does not tell about that where government will spend or what will it do, but it also gives major policy announcements. So as such policies are being announced on a day-to-day basis also, like for example, PM Gati Shakti, it was announced 2-3 months back. We have already discussed this thing, but again it was discussed at length in the budget presentation. What does it tell? It tells that PM Gati Shakti is going to be very, very important for the Government of India. So this is a time, budget presentation, that whatever government thinks that this is important for the economy, whatever are the focus areas where government is going to give more emphasis, where government is going to allocate more budgetary resources, and what all areas government is going to focus, that all is told in the parliament through this budget document. But when government announces these budgets and whatever provisions government tells, they just roughly tell you that these will be the broad vision, this will be the path that they will be taking forward. But a lot of policies which are announced in the budget, listen carefully, a lot of policies which are announced in the budget, until and unless they are implemented on ground, generally UPSC will not ask you a question, because when a policy is announced, suppose on 1st Feb, government announced that battery swapping policy. So they said that government will bring in battery swapping policy. So this is just a vague thing that government has told this thing. So now UPSC prelims exam that is going to happen on 5th June, they are not going to ask you about the battery swapping policy until and unless that policy comes into picture. So the various announcements, proposals that has been made in the budget, until and unless that policy comes in the next 1 year, UPSC will not ask you. This is the first thing. And some announcements, it may be possible that some announcements which a government has done, it may not be able to do that. It may not be able to do that. So maybe it will never come in your exam. Or some announcements which has not been done in the budget, if it happens, then of course that can also come in the exam. So just don't stick on the budget. Every day, whatever is happening in the economy, and I am updating you on the channel also, that is much more important than this budget and economic survey. So does that mean that budget is not at all relevant? No, it is relevant. It tells you that where economy is going forward, which areas government is focusing on, and how it is trying to take it forward. So prelims based question which comes, until and unless that policy or scheme is implemented, UPSC will not ask in the prelims exam, because prelims is about specific details of that policy or program. Now coming to mains, yes, mains based question can come from budget. For example, in a mains question, it may be asked that what are the 4 priority areas in the budget 22-23, how it is going to impact the economy or how it is going to impact the growth. So you should be aware about what are the 4 priority areas of this year budget. So broadly you should know about the focus areas of the budget so that you can answer mains based questions. And regarding details, for example, this budget announced about the digital tax. So that digital tax, once it comes into picture, then you should be aware about all the clear-cut details, not just broad things, because that can be asked in prelims also. So as a UPSC student, you should be broadly aware that what are the broader provisions, on which areas government is going to focus more in the next 1 year. These things you should broadly know right now, and once those things are implemented, then you should be knowing about the specific details if that thing is relevant or related to your subject. So in this way you need to focus on budget. But if you have not completed your syllabus, this class may not help you. So budget and survey is just an add-on on your already that you have read in the book and attended the classes, right? So I will be telling you what are the broad features of budget, what are the major important provisions in the budget, and certain fiscal related things, what has been mentioned in the budget figures basically. So you don't start reading all the budget document, just read the summary that I have shared and focus on the broader things. Now come to economic survey, how you should read about the economic survey. Now if you have seen this economic survey, there are chapters related to almost every topic that we have covered in the class. For example, there is a chapter on present state of the economy, there is a chapter on monetary management, there is a chapter on fiscal management, agriculture, industry, infrastructure. So if you expect that I will start teaching economic survey, then it is better than I should teach again you the entire syllabus. Because economic survey touches upon almost everything which I have discussed in the class. The chapter on agriculture and food management discusses all the schemes. So do you expect me to tell you all the schemes here? No. So what you need to do is that you have to complete the syllabus first. Now, so economic survey, what things are relevant for economic survey? Let me tell you. If there is any, economic survey which has been presented this year, it is about last 1 year. So in the last 1 year, whatever has happened in the economy in different sectors like agriculture, industry, services, infrastructure, fiscal management, all has been discussed. Now in economic survey, there is a lot of data that you are not supposed to mug up at all. And one thing which I have found in economic survey, since it was presented on 31st January, and data was available till November or December. So almost all the data that has been compared in economic survey, that is for April to November period, April to November 2021. Now that comparison April to November 2021 is not going to help you. It may just give you a feel that where economy is going, but from question point of view, if so, the April to November and December data says that exports increased. But until unless you know the total financial year data, you won't be able to solve questions. And almost every data has been compared from April to November. So you should know about the complete financial year details rather than just April to November. April to November economic survey has done because they did not have the data. It was presented on 31st January. But your exam is going to happen on 5th June. By that financial year will already be over 21-22. So you should know whatever you are studying, you should have the idea of the full financial year. But economic survey compares almost every data. Either you take agriculture, fiscal movements, monetary management, everything from April to November. So that may not help you much. The second thing, there is a lot of quarterly comparison data in the economic survey. Again, that quarterly comparison, as a student for reading, it may give you a good feel that where economy is quarterly wise moving. But again, for your exam point of view, it is of not much help. Not at all help, basically, let me tell you. It's of no help to you. So don't go into quarterly data of economic survey. There is a lot of data. Please just ignore it. Quarterly data you have to ignore. April to December data, it's of no use to you. What kind of data UPSC asks is the trend. Last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So yearly trend is much more relevant rather than this year economic survey. So don't waste time in decoding the quarterly or April to December, November 5-6 months data. You should have the complete information, and 90% of the data which has been given in the economic survey is of no use to you. So, but yes, the economic survey, whatever it has discussed, we are already discussing in the class, we are already discussing on the channel, I have already covered in the book also. But yes, if there are certain things which are more, which has been analyzed in a new way, if something new has been discussed, of course that I am going to discuss here in this class, right? So you may ignore reading the economic survey. You just attend this class and I have shared the summary notes that you just can refer. Blindly just don't read budget or economic survey, right? Yes, important provisions, you should know about that. Okay, what are the important provisions, what are the important tax provisions, that I am going to discuss here in the class. Okay. So first I will discuss budget and then economic survey, and I am not going to teach each and every part of economic survey. For example, agriculture I have already taught you in 7-8 hours. Now everything is there in this economic survey. So I am not going to repeat everything, but yes, what's the trend, what's the data, that I will be telling you. So let's start with budget. So let me just briefly discuss about the important themes of budget. What's the difference between this year budget as compared to the previous year's budget, and what's the focus areas, right? So this is the figure. Now, as I said that in budget a lot of data is presented and mostly is of no use to you, but there are few macroeconomic parameters. What are macroeconomic parameters? GDP, GDP growth, investment, forex, debt, deficit. These are macroeconomic parameters. Fiscal deficit, capital expenditure. So these are macroeconomic parameters that you must be aware of. See, and you need to know that what are these macroeconomic parameters in the budget, whether it is increasing, decreasing, or where it is going. So these 5-6 parameters you must be aware of, not all these details. Other details are not relevant. Now let me tell you about this year's budget, in what way it is different from the previous year's budget, right? Now, when this NDA government came in 2014, post 2014, you will see that there is a lot of expenditure focus on agriculture and rural sector. There has been a lot of focus on agriculture and rural sector post 2014. In this budget, that is missing. So there is not that much focus which we have seen in the last several budgets in agriculture and rural infrastructure, or agriculture or rural sector. and some Kisan unions have raised voices against this also, that this budget does not meet their expectations. So this budget lacks that. Maybe it could be the result of the reforms that government had to, the 3 acts that government had to repeal. So this is one thing which difference I have found. The second is about fiscal conservatism. Post 2014, whenever the NDA government has come, generally you will see the budget figures everywhere. The finance minister and the other officials from the Ministry of Finance, they are quite conservative about the fiscal deficit. They don't want to let it increase. They are very much concerned about the central government debt, about the fiscal deficit rising. So they try always to control it, they try to bring it down. This has been generally the focus area of NDA government. But last budget and this budget, there is no talk of fiscal consolidation. That means there is not much focus on reducing the deficit and reducing the debt, which used to be with the NDA government since last so many years. But see, last year government did not focus much on reducing fiscal deficit and reducing debt. And we all expected that it may be because of the COVID crisis that government is not focusing much on fiscal consolidation. Fiscal consolidation means government is trying to reduce debt and deficit, and government is trying to raise revenues. So last year there was not much talk on fiscal consolidation, and government spent a lot. But we thought that it's maybe a pandemic year, that's why government may be doing that. But this year again, there is no such talk about fiscal consolidation. Our deficit is quite high, debt is quite high, but as such the budget speech did not find a mention of all these things. What was mentioned much was capital expenditure. This time there has been too much focus on capital expenditure. There is no focus on fiscal consolidation. Of course, in future government has said that by 25-26 fiscal deficit will come down to 4.5%. That has just been a reference in the budget. But as such, the major focus is on expenditure, and that too on capital expenditure. So why government is trying to focus on, and of course last year also there was focus on capital expenditure, and this year, but otherwise before that government had always tried to move towards the fiscal consolidation path. But this year government is going to spend a lot on capital expenditure. What logic Nirmala Sitharaman has said that regarding increase in expenditure? She said about the virtuous cycle. There are two cycles that we call virtuous cycle and vicious cycle. Virtuous cycle means more expenditure, more job, more income, more consumption, more demand, more investment, more growth, more job. This is the cycle. Virtuous cycle means more expenditure, more income, more job, more demand, and then more growth. This cycle goes on. More demand, again more production. This is virtuous cycle. Past few years we were stuck in vicious cycle. Vicious cycle, less investment, less expenditure, less job creation, less income, less demand, then less investment, less job, less demand. So this is vicious cycle. Now because of the pandemic in the last 2 years, you all know that we went into recession. Now what logic government is saying regarding increase, and this time capital, this year means this present year and next year. The budget has been presented for the next year 2022 and 23. The capital expenditure government has increased by 25%. This. If you see the capital expenditure, this is an increase of 6 lakh crore to 7.5 lakh crore. This is an increase of 25%. This is an increase of 25%. From 2021 to this. 25% increase is too much in a year. And this, if you will see the previous year 2021, this increase is around 40%. So in the present year 21-22, capital expenditure increased by 40% from the previous year, and next year it is going to increase by 25%. This is a tremendous increase in Government of India's capital expenditure, which I have not seen in the last 10, 15 years or 20 years. That tells about where government is going to move forward, or in which way government is going to take forward this economy. And what logic has been given, that capital expenditure will move virtuous cycle, will bring in virtuous cycle, and it will crowd in private sector. These terms has been used in the budget speech, so these terms become very important for you. So government has said that since investment is not increasing much, so if government will spend a lot on expenditure, it has a much more multiplier impact, and it will pull in private sector. It will crowd in private sector. That's a different matter, that interests have also started increasing it. So you may ask that, sir, interest and yield are increasing because government is borrowing a lot. So don't you think that it will crowd out private sector? So that we can say this, but it will all depend on that how much is the savings with the bank, whether, because till now liquidity is enough in the economy. Till now liquidity is enough because of the Federal Bank of US, they are announcing that they are going to increase the interest rates, that's why yield is increasing. But otherwise, we will have to see that whether higher interest rate crowds out private investment or crowds in. But last year economic survey says that in the past 25-30 years, post 1991, India has never seen crowd out of private sector. There is no experience of crowd out. So we can assume that crowd out is not going to happen, and mostly the government expenditure in the capital expenditure is going to crowd in the private sector. Multiplier impact, it has been talked about. Now, you tell me that when government is going to spend in capital expenditure, and this is a major item. And when government is going to increase in capital expenditure, saying that it has a multiplier impact and it will create jobs, investment, then you must know that what kind of capital expenditure has the highest multiplier impact. Capital expenditure can be in infrastructure, road, railway, or either steel plant, power plant. Do you know that which has the highest multiplier impact? One of the highest multiplier impact, railways. Connectivity projects has the highest multiplier impact. That means if 1 rupee government will spend, it increases the GDP by 5.5 rupees if that 1 rupee has been spent in railways. Railway has one of the highest multiplier impact. So the 7.5 lakh crore that government is going to spend in capital expenditure, a major portion has been allocated for the railway capital expenditure. So there is a lot of focus on railway expenditure because it creates multiplier impact, connectivity. So this is one important point that you should know. Till 2014-15, our subsidies were generally higher than the capital expenditure. But now this trend has reversed. Now our capital expenditure is 7.5 lakh crore and our subsidy expenditure, major explicit subsidies, around 3 to 3.2 lakh crore. So capital expenditure has increased much more as compared to subsidies. So subsidy expenditure is just 3.2 lakh crore. So capital expenditure is more than doubled the subsidy expenditure. And before 2014, it was capital expenditure was less than the subsidy expenditure. So this has been a major change in the budget. This is one thing. Now you all know that budget is based on nominal figures, the current price, not constant price. It is based on the current price figures. So next year, what's the total expenditure? This one. I have always told my students that there are certain, you don't need to remember too much of data, but certain data is very important, certain important data, which I tell. For example, you should know about the GDP of India. What's the GDP figure? You should know about the central government budget. Because this year, mains question was that divide the central government budget. Why central government budget? What are the components of central government budget? Revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Now, when a question is being asked that what are the components of central government budget, and if you don't know the budgeted figure, you are not going to get good marks. You must know the figure. So a student who is going to write that Government of India is going to spend 35 lakh crore or 37.5 lakh crore, this is the total budget of Government of India, there only he gets 1 or 2 extra marks. So certain macroeconomic parameters are very, very important. You must keep it in mind. This year budget, next year budget is basically 258 lakh crore. 2020-21 it was around 198 lakh crore. Right? So this is nominal growth. Do you know what's the nominal growth in the present year compared from last 1 year? It is around 15-16%. Now out of this, you should be aware about so around 40 lakh crore we are going to spend next year. Out of 40 lakh crore, our revenue expenditure is 32 and rest 7.5 is capital expenditure. A rough idea you should have that 40 lakh crore total expenditure, 7.5 capital and rest 32.5 revenue expenditure. This you should have a fair enough idea. Now in this year's budget document, a new term has been mentioned called effective capital expenditure. Effective capital expenditure. This is a new term which I have found mentioned in the budget document this year. What is that effective capital expenditure? I hope that you know effective revenue deficit. Actually what happens, central government gives grants to states. So from the central government side it is a grant, revenue kind of expenditure, but states are asked to spend on capital expenditure. So for central government gave grant to states. So since it gave grants, so it's a revenue expenditure for center, because central government's assets are not going to increase, but ultimately state government's assets are going to get created. So that is called, so central government has 7.5 capital expenditure. So this asset is going to create on the name of the center. But effective capital expenditure, there are certain grants which has been given by central government around more than 3 lakh crore to the states for creation of capital assets. So this is capital expenditure and around 3 lakh crore of grants which has been given by central government to states for creation of for expenditure on capital assets. So 7.5 plus 3, 11.5 is 7.5 plus 3, 10.5 is basically effective capital expenditure on the same terms of effective revenue deficit. Now coming to the deficit figures. So you are seeing here that fiscal deficit, present year it is going to be 6.9% and next year it is going to be 6.4%. So slight decrease. What I wanted to, so these figures of course you understand and you can remember these figures. What is more important here is debt to GDP ratio, this one. Now present debt to GDP ratio is, let me just explain about it. 232 lakh crore is the GDP, nominal GDP this year, and 25.2 lakh crore is it is called gross tax revenue, central government's total revenue. Tax revenue, 25.2 lakh crore is the central government's total revenue. Tax revenue basically, central government's total tax revenue. Out of this 25.2, 41% is shared with the states. So this is central government's total tax revenue. That's why you will see that revenue receipts, even if this is tax and all is counted in revenue receipts, but revenue receipts are less than this. Revenue receipts are less than this because out of this 41% is shared with the states, finance commission grants. But central government collects total tax 25.2 lakh crore, and 25.2 divided by 232 is basically 10.86 is the tax to GDP ratio. Now tax to GDP ratio has improved. Tax to GDP ratio, if you will compare from the last years, it has improved. And See, one thing I want to tell you that till now, till 2 years back, we generally used to compare, and data is also asked regarding that, we generally used to compare from the just previous year. Just for example, I asked that what is the real growth, you will say -7% or whatever. Fiscal deficit or expenditure, we used to compare from the just previous year. But now, since 1920 was a pandemic year, 1920 was a pandemic year. See, we are in 2021, we are in 2021, 22, 2020, 21 and 2019, 20. All the comparison you will see from here. We are here presently. So, generally we compare from the just previous year, but this time because of this this was a COVID year, right? This was a COVID year, and in most of the cases you will see base effect, because here most of the things have declined. So, when you are going to compare from this year, COVID year, you will see there is a lot of increase. You will see there is a lot of increase as compared to this. And that is why this year's economic survey has also given almost every comparison, it has also given from this year to this year also. So, suppose someone is asking what is the growth in 2021-22 measured from the just previous year and measured from before COVID year. So, you should also keep this in mind, that you should have a slight idea of comparison from the just before the COVID year. That means this, because this was a kind of normal year. So, almost every comparison in the economic survey is from the just previous year also and from this previous year also. So, this you have to keep it in mind, because the questions can be asked. For example, in the prelims, question can be asked, for example, the GDP has increased, the absolute GDP figure has increased from the pre-pandemic year 1920. Then you should be aware, right? So, pre-pandemic comparison also you will have to keep it in mind. Pre-pandemic year you will have to keep it in mind. That is very important for you. And we will do certain comparisons. I will show you that what are the important figures and how we should compare, so that you should be able to answer it quickly. So, we will do some comparison, I have noted it down. So, but that keep it in mind that you have to compare from here also. Now, regarding tax collection, see what has happened. 2019-20 normal year, and this is COVID year, right? Now, in COVID year, if I'll ask you that which of the macroeconomic parameters deteriorated, so almost every parameter has deteriorated. For example, GDP decrease, I am talking about 2020-21. So, in 2020-21, GDP decreased, growth went negative, fiscal deficit increased means deteriorated, debt increased, exports declined. So, most of the parameters declined. But there is one parameter, one important parameter which has increased in even COVID year. One parameter which has increased in even COVID year, and that is central government's tax collection. From here to here, real growth negative, nominal GDP growth is negative, but tax from here to here increased. This is a very important insight that you should all notice. 2019-20, 2020-21. Almost every parameter from here to here deteriorated. Real GDP decreased, GNP decreased, nominal GDP decreased, deficit increased, debt increased, everything, almost everything. But tax, central government's tax collection slightly increased. This is a very important information that you must try to analyze. That when all the macroeconomic parameters are decreasing in the COVID year, this is the COVID year, then why come, for example, you know that tax collection depends on basically nominal GDP. So, if nominal GDP decreased, real GDP decreased, how come central government's tax collection has increased? And it has increased. I will just tell you the figures, how much it has basically increased. 2021, 20.27. This is 20.27 lakh crore. And this is 1920 is 20.1. Rupees 20.1 lakh crore. Even if it is very slight, but this tax collection has increased. This is a very important information, you must keep it in mind. But you should also think that why tax has increased when GDP has decreased. Both real and nominal, when it has decreased, why tax collection has increased, central government's tax collection. The reason is, listen carefully. In GDP, we both have informal economy, formal economy, right? So, GDP is based on both informal and formal economy. So, informal activities and formal activities both are included in GDP. In this COVID year, so informal and formal activities both are included in GDP, but informal activities don't pay tax. Informal activities is included in GDP, but they don't pay tax. Now, in this year, informal activities got hit because of COVID. This year, informal activities got hit because of COVID. But those informal activities were not paying tax. So, the tax, there was no tax on informal activities. So, that did not get impact. So, informal activities got impacted a lot. GDP got impacted a lot. But tax collection did not get impacted a lot. Because most of the economy, the informal activities were mostly hit, on which government was not collecting GST or the government was not collecting tax. So, as such, tax was not hit much. And government, so this is one reason. Second is government, in the last 1-2 years, government has taken several tax reforms, administrative reforms regarding collection of tax, and a lot of businessmen were evading GST. So, government brought them into net. So, that has also helped. So, gross tax collection has increased even in the COVID year. Please keep it in mind. And that is why tax buoyancy has increased because of the formalization, because of the more formal economy, you can say, and some administrative tax reforms, right. So, this is the central government's tax to GDP ratio. If you will combine states tax to GDP ratio is around 4%, 4 to 4.5. So, if you will combine center and state both, so tax to GDP ratio will come around 15%, tax to GDP ratio, around 4 to 4.5% states, and center is around 11% tax to GDP ratio, right. So, these are the major items that you should focus on. Now, let us move on to the budget proposals, and there are a lot of budget proposals, and I will be discussing certain very important and basic budget proposals. Rest of the proposals, of course, once that will be implemented, you will come to know. So, and basically before that, I just wanted to tell you about the major themes of the budget. So, this year Major themes means what are the focus areas of budget, right? There is a lot of focus on infrastructure, multimodal connectivity, PM Gati Shakti. Then the other focus area is of technology. Either you take it startups, agriculture startups, fintech. In all these areas, there is a lot of focus. Focus is on drones. Then the other focus area is this. If government will spend a lot on capital expenditure, it will pull in private sector, crowd in private sector. That's also one of the focus areas. And cities as centers of growth. There is a lot of proposals for improving the urban system, urban infrastructure. So these are the major focus areas, and of course there is a major announcement regarding digital assets and tax, so that also will be covering. So these are the broad themes. So let's try to understand each of the proposals. So budget announcements. Let's look at the important announcements and those which are relevant for your exam, that we'll be discussing in more detail. Now you know that we have it's been 75 years of independence. Now the next 25 years leading up to the 100 years of independence has been defined as Amrit Kal. So Amrit Kal, there are certain goals for the Amrit Kal to achieve the vision of India at 100. So where will India be when we will have 100 years of independence, after 100 years of independence? For that, 2-3 points have been mentioned. More macroeconomic level growth, with focus on inclusive welfare. So inclusive welfare, anyways, we are always getting questions on inclusive growth. So there is more focus on inclusive welfare. Then, as I said, focus on digital economy, fintech, technology. And third is virtuous cycle. This virtuous cycle and vicious cycle, 2 years back, in the economic survey presented in July 19, once in May 19 the elections happened. So in July again budget was presented, budget and economic survey. So in July 19, there has been a detailed discussion on virtuous and vicious cycle. If you have time, please study that, because this is the whole focus of this year's budget and economic survey also. So these are the 3 goals that central government is trying to achieve. Now, the whole budget I have divided into 4 parts. So we will be discussing the whole budget into 4 parts. The first part, part A, just one sec. The first part. So part A, it's been part A, part B, part C, part D. So we will be covering in 4 parts. Part A has given 4 priority areas for the next 1 year. So the next 1 year we are going to have 4 priority areas where government will be focusing a lot, where government will be bringing schemes, where government's most of the expenditure will be going on. And those 4 priority areas you should know. First is PM Gati Shakti. Now let me tell you that why there is a lot of focus on PM Gati Shakti. It was, see, as you know that it was already launched 2 months back, but again this has been reiterated several times in the budget. Why there is a focus on PM Gati Shakti, and what is basically PM Gati Shakti? See, in India what we have found is that, see, first let me tell you briefly about the PM Gati Shakti. PM Gati Shakti is a digital platform which is going to connect several ministries, 16-17 ministries, which is going to coordinate efforts from the different ministries so that there is a planned development of the different infrastructure sectors. For example, why this is required or why this is needed for India? What's the logic behind it? Because PM Gati Shakti, we always talk about intermodal connectivity, multimodal connectivity, connecting road, railways, airports, ports. So why there is too much of focus on PM Gati Shakti? The answer is, when we got independence, railway was carrying around 60% of the freight cargo and road was carrying only 30%. Now, in the last 70 years, so I said road at the time of independence, road and rail, this was carrying 60% of the cargo and this was carrying 30% of the cargo, approximately. Now, today's situation is road, railway 30% and road 60%. This is the present situation. Why is this happened, and is it good or bad for the country? It is bad for the country. Why it is bad for the country? Because railway transportation is 1/3 cheaper than the road transportation. Railway transportation is 1/3 cheaper than the road transportation. Railway transportation is more energy efficient, cost efficient. Railway transportation is more environment friendly. Then why it happened? Because no one planned. All these ministries acted separately. All the ministries, there was no coordination among the ministries that what projects should be done, whether on a particular connecting point, railway will be more feasible or roadways will be more feasible. Whoever wanted, they have developed in the various ministries have developed these projects in their own individual capacities separately. And the reason is the model mix of the country. The model mix of the country now has, I should say, that deteriorated. The model mix of the country is not good. For example, model mix means different modes of transport. So, whatever should be the different modes of transport and which transport should carry what freight, that has all gone for a toss. Because there was no coordination, the projects which are being planned, suppose on a particular section, railway is more feasible, roads are being constructed. So, there is no coordination, and because of that, our logistics cost is much more. As you all know that our logistics cost is around 14 to 15% of the GDP. In developed economy, China, it is 8 to 9%. So, now we have realized that a planned development of several ministries, infrastructure ministries, and multimodal connectivity, multimodal parks, multimodal terminal, that is much more required to improve our efficiency of the economy. To make logistics efficient, to reduce the logistics cost, there must be a coordinated planning among different departments and different ministries. That's why there is a lot of focus on PM Gati Shakti. And as I have told you in the class also in the supply chain, that for any product, the logistics cost is much more as compared to its manufacturing. And if you want to become export competitive without improving logistics, we can't do that. So, there is a lot of focus on PM Gati Shakti. Of course, government is going to spend on highways also. National highways network will be expanded. See, these statements are not relevant for your exam, but yes, you know that, okay, there is a focus on roads and railways and these things. Government is also going to develop a unified logistics interface platform. Government is going to develop multimodal logistics park with PPP mode. Now, government is going to develop multimodal logistics park with PPP mode. This statement is not relevant, but what will be the, once it's implemented, then which PPP model we are going to follow for that multimodal logistics park, that is more important. Whether it is going to be revenue sharing, whether it is going to be profit sharing, or whether it is going to be implemented through SPV model or whatever. So, that will be important rather than this just a statement that government is going to develop. So, these are just broad provisions. Once these things get implemented, you should be aware in more minute details. We have seen that one district, one product. Have you heard of this scheme? One district, one product. It is under formalization of micro food processing enterprises. In one district, we are giving emphasis on one product so that it become export competitive. On that same model, now government is saying one station, one product. One, basically it's related to railway, one station, one product. So, on different railway stations, logistics and supply chain will be developed for a specific particular product. Concept will be popularized to help local business and supply chains. So, every station, railway station will be improved, logistics and supply chain will be improved specific to a particular product. Then integration of postal and railway networks to provide seamless solutions for movement of parcels. Postal and railways, these will be connected for better supply chain. So, multimodal logistics, PM Gati Shakti, faster transport, this is the one of the main priority areas of this budget. Then, just one sec. Then the other focus area, other important area is inclusive development. So, first is PM Gati Shakti, second is inclusive development. See, first I will be discussing this budget and then I will be taking up your questions. Please don't ask questions in between. Once I complete the budget and then I will tell you that you please start asking. So, it will be better, but because otherwise all these questions will be lost and it will be difficult for me to answer. So, let me complete this budget first and then you will have time to ask questions. I will handle the questions and then we will move on to economic survey. So, second focus area is inclusive development. Of course, you understand that inclusive growth and development is one of the important areas of focus of the government since past also, but this year the budget has specifically been divided in 4 priority areas and one is the inclusive development. So, regarding agriculture, this year's budget focuses a lot on natural and zero budget farming, chemical free farming. So, there is going to be emphasis on that. Now, there are several schemes related to that and you can keep on going reading those, but this is the focus area that you should be aware of, and government is going to develop a corridor alongside Ganga for the this natural farming. Regarding 2023 year of millets, so government is going to develop infrastructure and supply chain facilities, processing facilities related to the millets also. So, there will be a focus on millets also. This year's budget focuses a lot on technology and drones. So, there has been a special focus on drone technology. And Kisan drones will be used, Kisan drones will be promoted for agricultural purposes, for spraying pesticides, for spraying, for digitization of land records, for crop assessment. So, there is going to be a lot of usage of Kisan drones in land record management or spraying pesticides or for any other agricultural practices. And government is also going to set up a fund through NABARD. Now, government is going to set up a fund through NABARD which will finance startups for agriculture. Now, once the fund will be set up, then it is better to study that rather than mugging up these statements, right. So, it is right now it is of no help to you. River linking projects, you have been studying since past and you keep on studying. So, river linking project is again one of the focus areas. Certain things I will be discussing in detail, just please wait, but there are certain generic things which you can just have a look. Now, emergency credit line guarantee scheme, emergency credit line guarantee scheme. See, when pandemic came, Government of India launched several schemes. Now, as a student from exam point of view, you can't mug up all these schemes, and I have told time and again that it's very difficult for any student to mug up all these schemes implemented during pandemic. But I have also told you that there are 1 or 2 schemes which has been too much highlighted in almost every government document, which has been quite successful. So that becomes important for your exam. It may not have been asked in the last year, October prelims, but 2-3 schemes implemented during pandemic, which has a very larger scope and it impacted a lot of people and businesses. Those 2-3 schemes you must remember, whether it has been discussed in budget or not. And those schemes are, first scheme is, which was launched just when this pandemic started, that is Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme. Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme. Almost every month this scheme is stated in government documents and it has been stated in budget also. So what government has said that Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme, which has provided much needed additional credit to various MSMEs, will be extended till March. Now let me just briefly touch upon this scheme. What government said that, and you can read about the specific details and remember the points, but let me tell you about this Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme. When pandemic hit in March 2020, government said that all the MSMEs and individual owned businesses who have already taken loan and are not in a position to pay and their business has been hit. MSMEs, there is more focus on MSME. MSMEs, professional businesses and individual businesses who have already taken loan, they can take additional loan. They can take additional loan under this scheme. Now during pandemic, when they are going to get additional loan from banks or other institutions, why banks and other institutions will give loan when they have already taken loan and have not paid? So government said that government will provide guarantee on that loans. So when government will provide guarantee, then of course those banks and financial institutions will be willing to support them with lending activity. So Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme, it's a guarantee scheme, government guarantee, government gives guarantee. So when government gave guarantee, banks were willing to extend loans to MSMEs and other individual businesses during the pandemic year, and it has helped a lot MSME. The various surveys and the results have shown that this particular scheme has helped a lot to MSMEs and small businesses during the pandemic year. And that's why government is going to say that, government has said that it will extend this to March 2023. And there is Credit Guarantee Trust for, and this is a trust which also provides funds. This is also going to increase, not much relevant, but this you must remember. Credit guarantee. So there is a credit guarantee fund, and this credit guarantee trust, this trust provides guarantee on that credit guarantee fund. Then a digital university will be set up. All these just you read out, no need to remember at all. Just one sec. Fine. So next provision is post offices are going to be connected through core banking system. Core banking system, you know, all the banks branches, we have already core banking in the banking arena. You can pay transfer online through all the banking, you don't need to go to the physical branch, and all the branches are connected basically. That is going to happen for the post office also. So government plans core banking for the post office also. So in 2022, 100% of 1.5 lakh post offices will be connected, will be on the core banking system, enabling financial inclusion. So what you can do is, you can transfer funds from one post office to another easily. You can transfer between post office and bank also, you can transfer the money, and of course if you can do that, you can withdraw from the ATM and other things. So it is going to help a lot in financial inclusion. Post offices will come on core banking platform, and once it is done, then the more finer details will be available. So that will be more relevant for you. Right now you just have a look, and digital banking units will be opened. Already it has started. So 75 digital banking units will also be opened. Now the third important priority area is productivity enhancement, investment, sunrise opportunity. This you can just read, electronic passport. So, one is government is going to issue electronic passports. Second is battery swapping policy. As you know that urban infrastructure, in urban space, in urban areas, there is a space constraint and it will be quite difficult for electric vehicles to charge because they will have to wait and there is not much space. So, battery swapping policy will be brought in. Once it will be brought in, then you will read about the detail, but battery swapping policy is basically you went with your car and the battery is about to discharge. So, you will give that battery and you will get another battery which is already charged. So, you will get that battery and you can then drive. So, standards so that it can be interchanged, all these will be brought in the battery swapping policy. Then states will be encouraged to adopt unique land parcel identification number. This will also be once developed, we will come to know. Now, cross-border insolvency. Right now, our IBC code does not cater to cross-border insolvency. What is cross-border insolvency? Cross-border insolvency means the debtor which has gone bankrupt. If the debtor has assets, suppose Reliance in India, and it is about to go bankrupt. So, if the debtor has assets in other countries, in more than one country, or the lender is in more than one country, then it is called cross-border insolvency. Cross-border insolvency. So, cross-border insolvency, government will bring rules, clauses regarding cross-border insolvency because there are a lot of cases where there are cross-border insolvency involved. Next is surety bonds. The use of surety bonds. To reduce indirect cost for suppliers and work contracts, government will bring in surety bonds in place of bank guarantee. So, let me explain you briefly about what is surety bonds. Suppose I am a contractor. Surety bonds. If I am a contractor, so when government announces any tender and I participate in that tender, so government asks me to keep some money so that I should complete the work properly, and once I complete the work properly, then government returns that money. So, just to ensure that I should not leave the project in between and I will complete the work, government asks me to deposit some money. Now, if and depending on the project size, that money is asked. Suppose the project is big, then government may say deposit 100 crore or something like that. So, it depends on the project value. Now, if I will deposit the money, now that much money is blocked, right, and it hurts as a cost to the businessman. So, then we brought a concept of, because this, if I have to keep 10 crore to do a particular work, then 10 crore money is blocked. So, we brought a concept of bank guarantee. Now, what is bank guarantee? So, government said that, suppose I have to keep 10 crore rupees. So, government said that rather than 10 crore keeping 10 crore rupees with the government, you can keep a bank guarantee also. What do you mean by bank guarantee? So, I as a businessman contractor, I went to my bank and said that, please prepare a bank guarantee of 10 crore rupees. So, rather than keeping 10 crore cash with the government, I will keep this bank guarantee. But if I am asking to the banker that give me guarantee of 10 crore, and of course, I will approach my bank. So, if bank gives me 10 crore bank guarantee and I kept with the government, and if in between I leave, government will produce that bank guarantee to the bank, and bank will be legally bound to pay to the government. Because when bank gives me bank guarantee as a contractor, when I get bank guarantee, that bank guarantee is in favor of the government. So, I keep this bank guarantee rather than keeping 10 crore cash, I keep this 10 crore bank guarantee and I perform my work. But to get that bank guarantee, I again need to pay some amount to the bank. I need to pay. Suppose I want to get a bank guarantee of 10 crore, so I may have to pay 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 50 lakh, 1 crore depending on our relationship, depending on my credit profile. depending on our trust factor. Small businesses may have to keep more percentage. Again, even keeping 10% of 10 crore, 1 crore is costly for small businesses. It's a cost, ideal cost. So government is now saying that rather than keeping cash, rather than keeping bank guarantee, now you can have a surety bonds. Now you can have surety bonds. So surety bonds was not allowed 2-3 months back, but this was a requirement, and our Minister Nitin Gadkari, he also consulted, and so ultimately IRDAI, Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, has allowed surety bonds for these kinds of works. So what are surety bonds? This is government, this is contractor, and this is insurance company. Government, contractor, insurance company, right? This is called surety. This is called principal. Just one sec. And this is called obligee, right? So earlier what used to happen, that this contractor used to keep cash or bank guarantee. Now what will happen, that this contractor will purchase bonds, surety bonds. This will purchase surety bonds. Suppose 10 crore worth of surety bonds this contractor purchased, and on that 10 crore, some premium percentage every year the contractor will pay to the insurance company, some premium. This surety bond, this contractor will give to government, right? So contractor purchased the surety bond, on which it will have to pay some annual premium, and this contractor can keep the surety bond with the government, and he can do work. Once the work is finished, government will return the surety bond. The contractor will return the surety bond to this insurance company, and suppose this work was for 3 years. So for 3 years, this contractor paid the premium. That's fine. Now suppose, so 3 years premium, of course it will have to pay. That premium is less as compared to that bank guarantee cost. Now suppose the contractor got the surety bond, it kept, and while it was doing work, it left in between 10 crore surety bond worth rupees 10 crore, it kept, and in between it left the project. Then government will encash this bond. Government will give this bond to, government will show this bond to the insurance company, and insurance company will have to give 10 crore to the government. And then the surety, the insurance company, will be legally allowed to recover that money from the contractor. So surety will have the legal authority to recover that money from the contractor in case of contractor defaulted. Legally, they will pursue a case and then they will try to recover. So this is the concept of surety. Now it has been allowed by IRDAI. It was a demand from the various infrastructure and other sectors, right? So it will replace bank guarantee. Then service obligation, universal service obligation fund to enable affordable broadband and mobile service proliferation. Broadband and mobile service in rural areas, rural and remote areas, 5% of annual collections from Universal Service Obligation Fund will be allocated. Now you know about the Universal Service Obligation Fund. It was constituted under the Indian Telegraph Act, Amendment 2003. So this fund is under Department of Telecom, right? This fund is under Department of Telecom, and 5% from the Universal Service Obligation Fund will be allocated for providing mobile and broadband services. This is just an information. Important, the next thing is Special Economic Zones Act will be replaced by a new act. Since several years I am telling you about the issues with this act, about the issues with our SEZ model. Thankfully, government has listened and government is going to replace that act with a new act. Once it comes, then we will see that what changes government is going to bring in. Then circular economy. There is a focus on circular economy because there is a lot of waste generated from electronic devices, cars. So, again circular economy, public policies covering regulations, this will be extended producer's responsibility, this will be brought in. The policy and required legislative changes to promote agroforestry, yes. Now, these are areas which once it comes, then we will look into. Then next area of focus is financing of investments. Financing of investments. As I said that there is a lot of focus on infrastructure and spending. So, from where that will come on, that is also one of the priority areas. So, out of the 4 priority areas, one is, so first one was PM Gati Shakti, second one was inclusive development, third one was increasing productivity, fintech, and fourth one is financing investments. So, what are the various ways in which government is planning for the investment? The virtuous cycle of investment requires public investment to crowd in private sector. This is general statement I have already explained you. Sovereign green bonds will be issued for mobilizing resources for green infrastructure, again a normal statement. International Arbitration Center will be set up in the IFSC GIFT city to handle the various international related disputes. Data centers and register, this is fine. What is more important is digital rupee will be issued by RBI using blockchain and other technology starting from 2022-23. Digital rupee means central bank digital currency. Central bank digital currency. See, I have this central bank digital currency has already been in news since last few months. There has already been a discussion and I have explained this in the class also. So, in the coming fiscal, government is going to bring in central bank digital currency. I will be discussing this central bank digital currency combining with the cryptocurrency, but let me just tell you here that central bank digital currency, what's the important points, let me tell you here. The hard cash that we see, that's when I am holding that hard cash, that is a liability of RBI. So, if I am holding 100 rupees note, that is an asset for me and liability for RBI. But if I have deposited that 100 rupees in a bank, if I have deposited that 100 rupees in bank and I have got a deposit slip, then that deposit in the bank is not liability of RBI. If bank goes bankrupt, then RBI will not pay. Of course, that insurance is different thing, that 5 lakh rupees of insurance, that is fine. But beyond 5 lakh, if I have kept, that was liability of the bank, bank went bankrupt, RBI is not liable. Because when I have deposited, I have the deposit slip, not the currency. So, deposits are the liability of the banks, hard cash is the liability of RBI. Now, the digital central bank digital currency, digital rupee, which RBI will issue. So, digital rupee will be issued by RBI, and if I am holding 100 rupees digital rupee in my wallet, in my account, that is the liability of RBI. Digital rupee is equivalent to physical cash in almost everything, it is just that it exists in digital form. But otherwise, all logic, all money supply, all everything remains same with the rupee. So, digital rupee will also be legal tender. It can be replaced with cash, it can be converted in cash. It will be liability of RBI. So, I feel that because there was a lot of proliferation of cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are gaining ground, a lot of people have started transacting using them, and the RBI do not have any control of the cryptocurrency, and if that becomes a major medium for transaction, then it will be difficult for RBI to manage its monetary system and inflation and various things. So that's why the reason that government and RBI thought that let's have our own digital currency, digital rupee, which will be same for every purpose. It will be same as physical currency, it will just exist in digital form, right. Once it comes, then more details will be clear. Virtual currencies, cryptocurrencies I will just discuss. So for the next year, states have been allowed fiscal deficit of 4%. 2022-23 states can go fiscal deficit of 4%. And in this 4%, see, most of the states have kept limit in their FRBM Act 3%. But Center has said that you can spend more, 4% as per the Finance Commission recommendation. But in this 4%, 0.5% is linked to power sector reforms that, so states can spend 3.5%, they can go to 3.5% of fiscal deficit, and if they are willing to implement certain power sector reforms, then they can go to limit of 4%. Now the question arises is that, do states require central government approval? Do states require central government approval to breach the fiscal deficit target, to breach their fiscal deficit target? See, what is this statement says, in accordance with the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission, the states will be allowed a fiscal deficit of 4%. So the question is, does states require? As such, states don't require, but there is a clause in the constitution that if a state has taken loan from central government, then if a state government has taken loan from central government, then before taking any new loan, it requires central government approval. Now almost every state has taken loan from central government. So if they want to borrow more, they require central government approval. So in that sense, it has been written that central government has allowed. And as I told you that there is a lot of focus on capital expenditure, so central government has given 1 lakh crore for the next year to states. This is in addition to this. In addition to this 4% fiscal deficit, central government has given 1 lakh crore to the entire states if they are willing to spend on capital expenditure. So for 2022-23, rupees 1 lakh crore has been allocated for the scheme of financial assistance to states for capital investment. This is beyond the 4% fiscal deficit of states which has been allowed, right. Now part B, fiscal management, I have already discussed fiscal deficit. I said that we will be discussing the budget in 4 parts. Part A had 4 priorities. Part B, fiscal management, I have already discussed about the fiscal deficit. Part C, direct tax. Just one sec. Yes, so direct tax, 2-3 important things. One is, see, suppose I have filed my tax, the first statement I am talking about. If I have filed a tax return, and if there is some error, then earlier what used to happen that tax officials used to, we get involved into litigation and there was problem for the taxpayer. Now what provision has been made is that if I have filed tax and there is some error or there is some income on which I have not paid tax, so after the assessment year I will have 2 years for payment of my extra income which I had not filed in the income tax return. I can pay that extra tax on that part of the income. So 2 years time have been given to resolve. So now there will not be disputes if I pay. Sometimes it happens that certain income gets missed in the tax payment, and we used to get involved into disputes with the tax authority. So now government has said that, suppose 2 years back I did not pay something, I missed. So I can proactively say that this income was missed and I can pay tax on that, and there will not be any dispute as such. Earlier, minimum alternate tax on corporates it was 15%, on cooperatives it was 18.5%. So 18.5% MAT on cooperatives has been brought down to 15%. This provision regarding NPS, see, let me tell you one thing. When we invest, you know that till 1.5 lakh we get tax exemption. So if I invest in LIC or certain schemes, then I get tax exemption. So if my income is 15 lakh, right, and I invested 1.5 lakh in LIC, 1.5 lakh. So I will not pay tax on this income. My taxable income becomes 15 minus 1.5 rupees 13.5 lakhs, right? Now central government employees, now we have NPS, National Pension System. So central government employees, listen carefully, the employer, that means the central government, contributes 14% in the NPS account of the employee, and that 14% is exempted from tax payment. So if I am a central government employee and I am getting 15 lakhs, and if central government is contributing 14% into the NPS, so that 14% will be subtracted from my salary for the tax purpose, right? This was already there. But for states, only 10% was allowed to be deducted for tax purpose. Only. So even if a state government is contributing 14% to the state employees in the NPS, on all the 14% tax exemption was not available, only till 10% tax exemption was available. So now in this budget, central government has said that for states also 14% exemption will be given on par with central government employees, right? Then okay. Then next so this was that provision. Just one second. Then these two provisions, this one and this one. 2 years in 2019 September August when government brought corporate tax reform. So government had said that let me first explain you that government had said that if a new manufacturing company gets established and they start operations by 31st March 2023, then see, right now, listen carefully, I am explaining this point. Right now the corporate income tax is how much? 25%, right? 25.17%. But government, to promote manufacturing, government said that if any company is setting up manufacturing unit and they are starting manufacturing operation before 31st March 2023, so they will get a tax exemption and they will have to pay tax only 15%. Now that has been increased from 2023 to 2024. And regarding startups get 3 years tax exemption in the 10 years period. Earlier it was allowed till only 2022, now it has been extended to 2023. So whenever a startup gets established, suppose a startup gets established in 2022. So for the next 10 years, in the 10 years period, any 3 years consecutive, they can choose for tax exemption. So it was allowed only for those startups who were established till 31st March 2022. Now it has been allowed that all those startups who will get established by 31st March 2023, they will get tax exemption, incentive for 3 years consecutive years out of 10 years from the year of incorporation. And next point is this one, very, very important. Transfer of virtual digital assets. So this, let me talk about in detail about this provision, tax on virtual digital assets. It's quite conceptual, so you must understand it. Tax on transfer of virtual digital asset. Let me explain you. First thing, 2-3 concepts that you should be very clear with. When we say cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, cryptocurrencies are not currency. They are assets. Cryptocurrencies are not currency. Please keep it in mind. Cryptocurrency, this just confuses people. This just confuses people. Cryptocurrencies are not currencies. They are assets. They are assets. For example, if I purchased phone, can I pay in gold? Yes, I can pay in gold. No one is stopping me. No one is stopping me to pay in gold. This is a kind of barter trade. I purchased phone and I paid in gold according to its value. That's perfectly fine. It's not illegal. But if I purchase gold and if I purchase phone and I say that I will pay in gold only, he can deny, because it's not a legal tender. Gold is not a legal tender. But if he is willing, from the shop wherever I purchase the phone, if I am willing to pay gold and is willing to accept, it's not illegal. We can do that. For one asset, I can pay through some other asset. In exactly same way, if I purchased phone, I can pay. So phone is an asset. I purchase phone, I can pay in gold. I can pay in silver. Gold and silver are assets. And I can pay in cryptocurrencies. But cryptocurrency is again a virtual asset. It's not a currency. If I am paying, I purchase phone and if I am paying in cryptocurrency, crypto asset, let me call it crypto asset, can the shopkeeper deny? Yes, he can deny, because it's not a legal tender. Gold also he can deny, silver also he can deny, crypto asset, cryptocurrency he can also deny, because that's not legal tender. But yes, if he is willing, he can accept crypto asset, cryptocurrency. But try to understand that all these are assets. If I purchase this pen, I can pay 4 pencils in return of this pen if that person is willing to accept. In the same way, if I purchase something, I can pay in gold, silver or crypto asset, cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is not currency at all. It's just another class of asset. Right? So crypto is an asset, a digital asset, a digital asset. Right? So from where crypto derives its value? Cryptocurrency, from where it derives its value? Now if you will ask me, from where gold derives its value? Why people are willing to pay so much for gold? I don't have any value for it. I don't like it. But some people like it. There is some limited amount of gold. A lot of people are willing to hold it. So prices have zoomed. Simple. There is some limited amount of gold in the world and everyone wants to hold it, so prices have zoomed. There is no logic. That's why it has zoomed so much. In the same way, bitcoins, crypto asset, cryptocurrency, let me call it crypto asset, it can be created only in certain number, and there are some crazy people who want to hold it. prices have zoomed. But Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, it's a asset, virtual asset, right? But rupee note is a legal tender. It's a currency. If I have purchased something, I am paying in rupee note, no one can deny. So this is rupee. See carefully, gold, silver, real estate, and cryptocurrency. It's basically asset, virtual asset, virtual digital asset. I have some rupees, I purchased gold and made payment in rupees, I purchased silver and made payment in rupees, I purchased real estate, made payment in rupees, I purchased cryptocurrency and crypto asset and made payment in rupees, that's fine. So when I purchase gold and after 1 year I purchased gold worth rupees 100 and after 1 year I sold that gold in 120 rupees, so I gained 20 rupees. I purchased gold, some gold I purchased in 100 rupees, next day I sold in 120 rupees, so I gained 20 rupees. On that 20 rupees gain, I pay capital gain tax. There is a tax on that, right? In the same way, there is tax here also. If I purchase real estate in 1 crore, I purchased a house in 1 crore, next day I sold in 1.5 crore, so on 50 lakhs there is a tax. In the same way, consider cryptocurrency as a digital asset. It's not currency, it's a digital asset. I paid 1000 rupees and purchased a crypto coin, Bitcoin. I paid 100 rupees, purchased a Bitcoin. Next year I sold that Bitcoin in 120 rupees. I sold that Bitcoin and I got 120. So I purchased in 100 rupees, one Bitcoin. Next year I sold in 120 rupees. So I gained 20 rupees. That is my income. On 20 rupees, now government is saying that you will have to pay 30% tax. I purchased a digital asset cryptocurrency today in 100 rupees, next year I sold in 120 rupees. I gained 20 rupees, this is my income. On 20 rupees, government is saying that you will have to pay 30% tax, flat 30%. Because this is just an asset class. So this has been announced in the budget. Now, tax deducted at source, TDS. What is TDS? Related to this only, let me tell you. When my employer pays me salary, of course I should pay tax, but my employer deducts certain TDS. It's a rule that whoever is paying to someone, he should deduct certain amount of tax and pay to the government on his behalf. So when my employer pays, of course I should pay tax from my income, but certain tax he deducts and pays to the government on my behalf. This is called TDS, tax deducted at source. So I am getting the salary from PrepLadder. PrepLadder is the source of my income. So government asks PrepLadder that while paying to Vivek, you deduct some tax and pay to government. Then after whatever my income, if I feel that I have got more money as compared to tax deposited by the PrepLadder, I will further pay tax. So tax deducted at source, it helps in tracking various payments. Now in cryptocurrency, what government says that crypto asset, I paid 100 rupees, yes, I paid 100 rupees and purchased a Bitcoin. So when I am paying 100 rupees and purchasing a Bitcoin, so while paying 100 rupees, of course the price is 100 rupees, while paying 100 rupees, I should deduct 1% TDS, tax deducted at source, because the payment which I am making, that is income for someone else. So rather, while paying 100 rupees, I should deduct 1 rupees and pay to the government, and 99 rupees will go to that person. The price of the Bitcoin will be considered as 100 rupees, but he will get 99 only, 1 rupees will go tax to the government. This is called TDS. So government has said that on these transfers, 1% TDS will be deducted for tracking of transactions. And the second thing is, if I gave a Bitcoin as a gift to someone, then whoever got the gift Bitcoin, he will have to pay tax on that. So Bitcoins or crypto virtual assets given as a gift, that's also taxable in the hands of the recipients, whoever received that gift. So this has been introduced in the budget. Once it comes into picture, maybe will be more clear or more details, but almost everything I told it here. So cryptocurrencies are not currencies. And once this tax has been introduced, crypto guys are very, very happy that, see, last 4-5 months, 6 months, there was a news coming that government of India may, because there were reports that we should ban cryptocurrency, cryptocurrency, virtual currencies, we should ban it because it's very difficult to track and government will lose control of the monetary policy. So there were suggestions and crypto guys were concerned. Now when government introduced the tax, they got excited that government legalized this cryptocurrencies, crypto assets. Because once a tax is introduced, once government introduces tax, I am selling Bitcoins and I am paying tax, that means that activity is legal. But then Nirmala Sitharaman has said that imposing tax does not imply that it's legalized. And previous court judgments has also said that. There was a news 2 days back I have shared on the channel, you can look at it, Hindu news, I think yesterday's news, Sunday. Imposing tax on certain activity does not legalizes that activity. So Nirmala Sitharaman has said that I have authority to impose tax, I will do that. But whether that is crypto assets has been legalized in India, it's a legal asset or not, that is something which Parliament will decide. It will make a law on that. By imposing tax, it is not automatically legalizing that. And past court judgments also says that imposing tax does not legalize it as such. But most of the people are assuming that once tax is being imposed, that activity is coming under tax net. So hopefully that not will be banned in India. But let's see what happens. Right? So that was about direct taxes, and then, that was about virtual tax. Then part D is about indirect taxes. Indirect taxes, most of the taxes have been included in GST, which is now regularly changed. Budget does not do anything. Certain taxes like customs duty has not been included in GST, so those changes are announced in budget. As such, it is not relevant, right? One thing which is of important for you is unblended fuels. Government is trying to increase blending of petrol and diesel to reduce the import dependent. So unblended fuels from 1st October will have excise duty, 2 liter per liter extra excise duty. Government will impose just to promote blending of fuel, right? So that was all about the budget. That was all about the budget, and let me take few doubts. So now you can start asking doubts, and I will take few of your doubts, and then we will discuss economic survey. Just let me check your doubts. We will discuss 10 minutes your doubts, and then we will move forward. Just give me a moment. Now you can start asking doubts. If you have not asked earlier, you can start asking doubts. If possible, I will try to explain right now. Otherwise, if it's a separate topic, definitely I will prepare some other video. Sir, please take one session on mains answer for technical questions asked this year. Okay, I will take. So one session on mains answer. Then, sir, please mains के पेपर के आंसर पे भी एक क्लास ले लो. I have already discussed, taken a video on this mains, this year's January paper mains. I have discussed that question and that video is there on our YouTube channel. Sir, your PrepLadder course is very helpful. Thank you. Sir, one question, is this year budget is relevant or policy implemented in the years is incorporated for 2023 CSC examination? Is this year budget is relevant or policy implemented in the year? See, again I am telling you that whatever is happening day to day related to your syllabus, that is much more important as compared to budget and economic survey. This is the bottom line. Because whatever important things are happening that are being discussed, and UPSC frames questions from this. And most of the things, see, economic survey, as I said, whatever has happened in the last 1 year, that has been discussed in the economic survey. Now, whatever has happened in the last 1 year, we are already discussing on a day-to-day basis. And budget and economic survey, somewhere it tries to provide a summary. And so budget is more about announcements, what it is going to happen next year. Details are not clear. So it's difficult to read budget and answer a question. This is first thing. Regarding economic survey, the information presented in the economic survey is in such a way that it's very difficult for students to extract relevant information out of it. And it has been too loaded with data. It has been too loaded with data, and that data is also of such that you can't frame a question on that. Quarterly data. Now, quarterly variations in GST or debt or these things, government it should not be asked in your exam. It's better to ask trend you should have, because quarterly data even I can't remember. So the way economic survey presents the data, that data is not relevant for you. So reading economic survey line by line, it will not help you. It's just a reference book. If you want to see certain update, for example, I was reading that agriculture chapter and it said that now this much of FPOs has been registered. So for that information is relevant. But otherwise, what FPOs are doing, that has been explained in a much better and holistic way in the newspapers, in the PIB, in my book, rather than the economic survey. So as such, not much relevant. So one more session for analyzing the previous year question papers. ठीक है, तो एक mains का question paper and so mains question paper and prelims question paper I will both take. Now the exam is coming, so I will analyze that. I have already shared the PDF of this on my channel in today morning, Telegram channel. Will this video be available after? Of course available होगा. हम video live class ले रहे हैं तो छिपा थोड़ी देंगे. The video. Good evening, sir. I have completed all your classes. PrepLadder earlier. I used to have difficulty in understanding economic concept. Is very helpful. Thank you. Will we share the PDF? Please ask some relevant questions. I think आप लोगों को कोई ज़्यादा डाउट हुआ नहीं. Let me Sir, you said road is dear. Why government is making more roads? See, road is costlier than railways around 3 times. But that does not mean that government should not make roads. Railway cannot cater to all the transportation needs of the country. But wherever long distance and freight transportation, railway is more useful. Government should construct railway. So railway is also important, road is also important. The purpose is different. Na? So you said all schemes are not important and not relevant. Please let us know some of the important schemes to be studied for exams. I have shared in the PDF, and if something is left, I am preparing questions and I will share with the MCQ, whatever is relevant. So even if you ignore budget and economic survey, it will not impact your studies. So from today onwards till our prelims is there, I will keep on covering important topics on this PrepLadder YouTube channel. So don't worry about that. Sovereign green bonds means the money which will be raised, that will be used for renewable and green projects. So this is called green bond. Sovereign green bond means government will issue that bond. Simple. So what is sovereign bond? Sovereign bond means bond government issues basically. So what benefit get RBI when they reduce money supply through issuing bonds? Eventually RBI have to supply money back to economy when bonds bonds से money supply RBI can increase or decrease ना, तो it tries to manage in the economy the money supply. NRI deposits are included in central government debt, not in central government liabilities. NRI deposits are included in India's debt, not in central government debt or liabilities. Nirosa Relly, NRI, if an NRI deposited money in Axis Bank in India, it's a debt on India, not on government of India. There is a difference between India as a country and government of India. Sir, tax to GDP ratio में 25 lakh crore count के लिए, whereas revenue receipt is only. I explained Bhanu, in tax to GDP ratio, gross tax collection 25 lakh crore. Out of 25, 41% is shared with the states. Rest 16-17 lakh crore is left with the center. Plus certain other revenue receipts becomes the revenue receipts what has been given in the document. भाई ब्लॉकचेन टेक्नोलॉजी साइंस टेक में आप पढ़ लेना. अभी दिस लेक्चर इज गोइंग टू कंटिन्यू. In economic survey, I will be telling you what things you need to focus on, कैसे पढ़ना है, and I will be telling certain analysis also. So please wait, this session will continue till 7. Nagendra, sir, can you explain how public expenditure makes crowding effect? Because generally it results in crowding out effect. See, public expenditure means government expenditure. It can do crowd in, it can do crowd out. It can both do. But it depends on the present situation of the economy. It depends on the present situation of the economy. When we consider savings as constant in the economy, and if assume savings is constant, and when government borrows more and public sector is also interested, then it can do crowd out. But if income is increasing, job is increasing, savings is increasing, and then if government is borrowing, and is spending on capital expenditure, job is getting created, income is increasing, savings is increasing, then it can crowd in the private sector also. That has been discussed in the last economic survey, and I have discussed in the class also. So it can do crowd in and crowd out both, but economic survey says that in the last 25-30 years, post 1991, we have never seen a situation like crowd out, because savings and investments are growing. So crowd out, we have not faced crowd out. By fiscal deficit, here I discussed about the central government. Non-fungible tokens. I will say non-fungible tokens. See, non-fungible means non-replaceable tokens. Rupee note, crypto assets, cryptocurrencies are fungible tokens. Listen carefully. Devi Prasad, rupee notes and virtual currencies are fungible tokens, fungible objects. Non-fungible means non-replaceable. See, I have 1 rupee and you have also 1 rupee, we can replace it. There is no difference between my 1 rupee and your 1 rupee. So these are called replaceable, fungible. If I am holding a Bitcoin and you are also holding a Bitcoin asset, there is no difference. These are fungible, replaceable. But there are certain assets, there are certain class which can be non-fungible, which can't be. So if I am holding something which is unique in nature, which is not replaceable with, I will give you an example of book. Mr. Devi Prasad, listen carefully about fungible and non-fungible. I published 1000 books. All books are same in nature. They are replaceable, so they are fungible. We will call it all the 1000 books, they are fungible because one can be replaced with another. But if I purchased a book and I have written notes in that book, if I have highlighted that book, written some notes, now that book is unique. Now that book is unique among 1000, that book is not same with other books. It cannot be replaceable. So this is called non-fungible. Now non-fungible can be a physical thing also, can be an online asset also. So how changing interest rates in USA will impact investment in India? See, let me tell you, Arif, these things I have already discussed in class in detail. It has nothing to do with budget class. अब आप ये सब क्वेश्चन पूछोगे तो there is no end and I will keep on discussing and you will lose interest. So my videos are free at PrepLadder, all the concepts and everything. Go and watch all those concepts. Right? By US में if interest rate will increase, the debt investors who have invested in India, they will move to US. Stock market may further come down. So FPI investors move abroad if interest rate in US will increase. Government of India will be, RBI will be also pressurized to increase the interest rate repo rate here. If FRBM Act limits increase, if FRBM limits crossed, then government need to amend that FRBM Act in the parliament. And so if government spent more and it is crossing 3% limit, government will amend the FRBM Act and it will increase the limit from 3% to 4%. It does every year, almost government does. Whenever it exceeds, it changes the limit. Manish Kumar, when it will be mined in large amount, its value will crash. It all depends on demand and supply. If it is mined in large amounts, then definitely no one will hold and its value will crash. So how to change? So TDS will be applied at a source. So if RBI charges TDS, then see RBI is not charging TDS ना, ये जो virtual assets जो हैं, people are transacting ना, so people who is making payment, he will charge TDS. So increasing capital expenditure, bus 5 minutes more doubts and then we will start the survey class. So increasing capital expenditure without having a proper plan for spending, it will have an adverse. So who said that there is no proper plan? Sanmay Chavan. There is a proper plan. Government has already made this PM Gati Shakti, National Monetization Pipeline, National Infrastructure Pipeline. Kartikeya, if you want more explanation on crowd out, please attend that classes, videos. जो important issues and like digital rupee, once it comes into picture, then the details are more clear. I will explain further about it. Sir, whether tax like 30% on virtual will also be applied on digital currency? नहीं, see. Mr. Ravi Raj, digital currency which will be issued by RBI, that will be a central bank digital currency. It will be equivalent to rupee. No TDS, no tax on that as such. वो तो currency है. Tax is imposed on assets. क्रिप्टो करेंसी क्रिप्टो एसेट के ट्रांसफर पे टैक्स है, रूपी के ट्रांसफर पे नहीं. द डिजिटल रूपी विच विल बी इशूड बाय आरबीआई, इट विल बी ए लीगल टेंडर. वो करेंसी है, लीगल टेंडर है, जस्ट लाइक रूपी. इट्स नॉट एन एसेट. एसेट के ट्रांसफर पे टैक्स इंपोज किया जा रहा है, वर्चुअल डिजिटल एसेट. Effective capital expenditure means capital expenditure done by Government of India plus the grants which government gives to states, which comes under revenue expenditure of Government of India, that grants states use for capital expenditure. So the grants which government gave to states and which states is spent on capital expenditure, that is added to get effective capital expenditure. Sufficient. I think you guys have a lot of doubts on other topics also. So, we will keep on conducting sessions like this. So, let me now focus on the economic survey, right, and we will keep on conducting doubt sessions and issue based session from now onwards, so that we can have a lot more interaction, right. So, let me start the economic survey. We will finish this in 1 hour, and that will give you a fair enough idea that what to do for the economic survey, right. Okay, so let me tell you 2-3 things before that what to do with the economic survey. See, every chapter has a lot of data. Please don't go into that data, otherwise you will go mad. Every chapter has discussed whatever we have already discussed in the class, what we have already covered in the book. Just the updates are required, if there is any in the economic survey, right. If there is any in the economic survey, that is required. So, those updates I have covered it here. Let us discuss the important updates, because just say for example, there is a chapter on infrastructure, industry in the economic survey. Now, that infrastructure industry, the way information has been presented in the economic survey, you just can't read it. Too much of data flooding, it is not relevant for UPSC aspirant, right. So, it is always better that you follow the book. I have presented relevant information in a much better way. If there is some relevant information which is there in the economic survey, I am reading it, I will extract it and I will provide it in the form of notes, in the form of book, in the form of questions. So, I have taken certain relevant information from the economic survey, updates. So, let me discuss it, and you are not supposed to read the entire economic survey. You follow the videos, you follow the book, you follow the question bank. No need to go into that economic survey. If there is some updates, I will provide you. Economic survey. Now, again let me give you certain few highlights which I feel that it may be relevant for your prelims exam. What I have found is that 1920, and so this is the year before COVID, this is COVID year, and this is present year. Now, if someone asks that the year present year 2021-22, whatever was the output level before pandemic, are we going to achieve that output in this year, or are we be still lacking that? So, the output, the real output, I am talking about the real output in constant price systems. So, we produce this output before pandemic year 1920. So, it was like, let me just tell you like this, 1920, 2021 and 21-22. This is the present year, this is the pre-pandemic, this is the COVID year, and this is the output or GDP. So, there was certain output here. In 1920, we had certain output, let us say 145 lakh crore. Then it dipped, and then it has. So, the present output in 2021-22 is going to be slightly higher than the pre-pandemic level. So, this year output is lower than the pre-pandemic year 1920, but 2021 output is going to be a little bit higher than the pre-pandemic level. So, 145.7 lakh crore 1920 and 147.5. So, very slightly we are above the pre-pandemic level, very little, but we are above the pre-pandemic level. So, if someone asks that the real output of 21-22 is higher than the pre-pandemic level, yes, it is higher. Real output is higher. right, than the pre-pandemic level. Is national income higher? Yes, national income, because GDP and national income follow the same trend. So, national income 126 lakh crore, 128 lakh. So, national income and GDP in present year 21 is higher than the pre-pandemic. This analysis is very important. I will tell you why. So, we have crossed the pre-pandemic level. So, basically, we dipped and then we have gone a little bit higher than this. So, we have gained that. But 2 years expansion, what we could have expanded, that we have lost. So, we are above the pre-pandemic level in terms of GDP, in terms of national income. But what about per capita GDP and per capita income? Please listen carefully. Per capita GDP and per capita income. Per capita GDP and per capita income in the present year is lower than the pre-pandemic level. Per capita GDP of this year is higher than the pre-pandemic level, but per capita GDP, this is lower than the pre-pandemic level. Why is this so? A very interesting analysis, a very interesting fact. Suppose, let me tell you one thing, why it is so. See here, 1920, 2020, 2021, 21, 22. If the GDP remains, let us say, same, and the population increases. If GDP remains same, population increases, then per capita GDP will decrease. So, let us say population 10, 100 GDP, population 10. So, per capita GDP will decrease. Whenever population growth is more than GDP growth, per capita GDP will decrease. Here, our GDP has increased very slightly, but population has increased more. 134, 137, this increase from 134 to 137 is more than the increase from 145 to 147. So, population increased more than the GDP, that is why per capita GDP has decreased. So, if the question comes that we have our per capita GDP has crossed the pre-pandemic level, this statement you have to tell whether it is true or false. The per capita GDP has crossed the pre-pandemic level, 1920, false. Per capita income has crossed the pre-pandemic level, false. GDP at constant prices has crossed the pre-pandemic level, true. GDP at current prices have crossed the pre-pandemic level, true. If you will say this is all these are at constant prices. Now, if we talk about nominal GDP, here it was around 204 lakh crore, here it was around 198 lakh crore, and here it is going to be around 200 something lakh crore. Just one sec, how much it is going to be around 232 lakh crore, 232 lakh crore. So, nominal GDP also declined, but nominal GDP has now, our nominal GDP is above pre-pandemic level, real GDP is above pre-pandemic level. But per capita GDP, per capita income is still below at is still below the pre-pandemic level. Now, you know that welfare is about, welfare is, if the question, and this question has already come, welfare is more represented by GDP or per capita GDP? Per capita GDP. So even if our GDP now is higher than the pre-pandemic level, since our population has increased, so per capita GDP is still less than the pre-pandemic level. It's a very important thing. Please keep it in mind. Right? This statement I have just written it here. Now coming to this graph. This is again a very good information presented by Economic Survey. And since I told you that this year you have one more extra burden, that in 2021-22 you just don't need to compare from the just previous year, you need a comparison from the before pandemic year 1920 also. So in Economic Survey, every parameter has been compared from pre-pandemic level also, because that will give you the real picture. That will give you the real picture that what we have done in the last 2 years. Now see here, annual growth of GVA at constant prices. Annual growth of GVA at constant prices. See carefully. See, this is 107. What do you mean by 107? They have assumed that this level before pandemic 1920, this is 100. Let's assume that this is 100 pre-pandemic level. So if this is 100, now our agricultural activity is at 107. So in the 2 years period, agriculture has grown by 7.7%, 100 to 107. So agriculture has grown because agriculture was not at all impacted by the pandemic. In this year it grew 3.6%, in this year it grew 3.9%. So overall from here it grew it grew by 7.7%. So pre-pandemic, this is the pandemic year. So pre-pandemic level, agriculture production in recovery, it has shown that recovery over 1920. This is the recovery over 1920 in 2021-22. So 2021-22, agricultural production has surpassed the pre-pandemic level by 7.7%. We have classified the whole sector into 3: agriculture, industry and services. So you should have an idea of that out of the 3 sectors, agriculture, industry and services, which sector is above the pre-pandemic level, which sector has crossed the pre-pandemic level, and which sector is still below the pre-pandemic level. So in 2021-22, agriculture is crossing the pre-pandemic level. Industry 104. So if industry in 1920 was 100, industry after 2 years in 2021-22, this is about 2021-22. So industry has increased by 4.1%. So from the pre-pandemic level, it has increased by 4%. Agriculture increased by 7% in 2 years. Industry increased by 4.1%. And services, this one. The services output in constant terms, services output is still, if we take 19 as 100, our services output is still below the pre-pandemic level. So that's what I said, that this is the pre-pandemic level, we dropped and some parameters have, this is pre-pandemic level. So this is 1920, this is 2021 and this is 21-22. So in 21-22, some parameters have crossed the pre-pandemic level and some parameters have not crossed. A lot of parameters have crossed, but some parameters have not crossed. And this parameter is per capita GDP, per capita national income and overall services output. It is still below the pandemic level. Why? Why do you think that industrial activity has crossed pre-pandemic level? Why services has not crossed? Because a lot of services are informal activities. Services was impacted much more as compared to manufacturing. All this retail, wholesale trade, thela wala and everything, because of the lockdown, they got disrupted so much. So services impact has been more as compared to manufacturing. And we will see in the other graph also, in the percentage share in GDP, that services got impacted more. So agriculture, out of the three sectors, agriculture was not impacted by COVID. Industrial sector, it got impacted by COVID. It went down in 2021, but in 2021-22, it has surpassed the pre-pandemic level, but services is still below that. This is one analysis from this graph. Then coming to the next, see this one. Share of sectors in nominal GDP. So if we are producing value of goods, 100 rupees of goods and services we are producing in 2021-22, if we are producing rupees 100 in present time, in present price terms, so out of 100 rupees, agriculture sector is 18.8%, industry is 28.2% and services 53%. Share in GDP of agriculture sector, industrial sector and manufacturing sector. Now the question here is, if the question is asked, out of the agriculture, industry and services, which sector share in GDP decreased the most? It's services. See here, if you compare, this is pre-pandemic, 1920. Agriculture 18.4, industry 26.7 and services 55.0. If you will see today, in this year, after 2 years, agriculture has gained by 0.4%. Its share of agriculture increased, share of industries also increased, and services 55% to 53%. So there is more impact on services, and as I said that there are more informal units in case of services, much more, and they were more impacted by the lockdown. All this retail trade, wholesale trade, all this informal services, thela and vendors, all this got impacted. Trade, tourism and restaurants, all these services got impacted. See, transportation, air transport, railway transport, road transport, tourism, restaurant, all these were impacted much more as compared to any other industry. That's why you are seeing here. Okay, now next analysis. This is from the supply side perspective. Agriculture sector, agriculture sector, industrial sector and services sector. Now next analysis is about latest advanced estimates suggest that there is full recovery of, please listen carefully, full recovery of all the components on the demand side. So in 21-22, the demand side components all have recovered from the pre-pandemic level except private consumption. Except private consumption. Let me just give you a brief concept. Demand, from the, it has written that, this is a survey statement. Demand side. Demand side means whatever GDP we produce, who demands? Household sector, private sector, government sector and export. Our GDP is demanded by the 4 sectors of economy. This is a simplified version. Household consumes, household mostly purchase consumption goods. So, household we call it private consumption. Private sector, it does investment only. It purchases capital goods, investment. Government, consumption and investment both. Now, let me just redefine it. GDP, in the government documents how it is said, GDP is demanded by 4 things. So, this household consumption is called private consumption. So, private consumption. Government consumes also, invests also, government purchases consumption goods also, wheat, rice. So, government consumption. Private investment and government investment is total investment, Private investment and government investment I am clubbing, this is called total investment, this is also called gross fixed capital formation. Gross fixed capital formation. Gross fixed capital formation. And then we have exports. So, from the demand perspective, right, if someone will demand GDP, then only we will produce, right. So, from the demand perspective, we want to know that is the present demand 21, 22, is it more than the pre-pandemic level or is it still below the pre-pandemic level? And out of the demand there are 4 components. So, let us analyze that which components have not recovered and which components have recovered. So, our survey says that this government consumption is above the pre-pandemic level in 2021. So, in 2 years we are comparing from 1920 to 21-22. So, government consumption has recovered. I hope you are understanding. The comparison is from 2019-20, 2021, 21, 22. So, this comparison is being made. This is pre-pandemic. From here to here, we want to know that are we at the same level or surpassed or still below. So, government consumption has recovered. How come you can say? See, total consumption has 2 components, as I said, government consumption and private consumption. So, government consumption, you will say if this is 100, if this is 100, so government consumption is 110. Private consumption is 97. So, if the level is here is 100, private consumption is still below that. So, private consumption is still below the pre-pandemic level. So, rather than increasing in the 2 years, our private consumption is below the pre-pandemic level. This is an area of concern, because out of our GDP, you will see that out of our GDP, majority more than 50% is private consumption. More than, out of our GDP, which sector demands more? Private sector is out of our total GDP, private sector demands 60%. So, the sector which purchases 60% of the output, that sector is still below the pre-pandemic level. That is why there is a concern that if it does not increases, our recovery will not be steady. See what has happened, and one interesting fact is government consumption. Okay, what has happened is that because of the lockdown and other COVID related issues, private consumption, the demand of the private sector has declined. Now, when the demand of the private sector declined, GDP declined and it got impacted. So, to improve the economic situation, so that economy does not go into too much of recession, government started purchasing and consuming a lot. When their demand declined, GDP could have declined much more, but government started purchasing a lot of things. What government purchased? Government purchased a lot of wheat, lot of rice. Government, but when government is spending in subsidies, it is purchasing something. Government spent a lot. So when government is giving subsidy on LPG, what it is happening? Government purchased LPG cylinder a lot and gave it to people. That's what's happening. So government purchased a lot of consumption items. Government spent on capital expenditure also a lot. So that's why you will see that gross fixed capital formation, this is including private and government both. So if you will combine government and private both, so gross capital formation has also recovered. This has also recovered. Exports has also recovered. All the three components, out of the four components of demand side, the three components have recovered. Private consumption is still lacking. And that is a very major important point, because this part, this is more their share in the GDP. They demand more GDP as all of these three combined. And if this does not recover, we cannot say that our economy is on a steady path of recovery, because anytime it can go tip. But government, and there was a lot of demand from various economists, various politicians, that government should spend a lot. Government should spend a lot so that this demand picks up. Government should transfer cash in their accounts. So if government will transfer cash in their accounts, so private people will start purchasing a lot of items. But I think government is not very convinced with that. Government has to a certain extent tried to increase the private consumption, private demand. But it is focusing more on capital expenditure. Because government is saying that even if government is saying that if it will spend on capital expenditure, it will have a multiplier impact, it will crowd in the private sector will invest, jobs will be created, and this will get corrected. And government is not very much concerned about this, maybe because the elections are still 2 years away. So government is thinking that if government will invest a lot, in the long term it will help, and in the next 2-3 years it will revive the cycle and jobs will be created and private consumption will pick up. Let's see what happens. Some people think that it will, but some people think that a direct intervention, much more intervention is required, stimulus is required here. Much more subsidies, much more cash transfers is required. But this government is, I think, more long-term oriented, what I feel, because it is pumping a lot in capital expenditure. Capital expenditure revives both short-term and long-term, because when government spends a lot on capital expenditure, jobs get created, construction, workers, and in the long term, it improves the economic competitiveness. So everything, see here, exports increased, imports crossed 100 level. The only thing which is lacking is private consumption. And this is because a lot of people lost jobs in the pandemic, a lot of people income got reduced. This is the reason that private consumption is still below that level. And moving to the next item. Yes, share. That's what I was talking about. So share, if you will see, private consumption, 57.5. 2 years back before pandemic, it was 60.5. So it's still below. And so its share in GDP, gross fixed capital formation has increased. It has moved. See, gross fixed capital formation, as I have told you, 2 years back it had declined to 26-27%, but now it has peaked to 29%, almost 30% gross fixed capital formation. Okay, now some discussion on government's strategy in the pandemic. government's strategy regarding economy. It has been found that, see, in the past whatever recessions or slowdown we have faced, that was mostly demand side recession, demand side problem. The demand decreased because of any reason. This pandemic was both supply and demand. Government imposed lockdown, so there was a supply side problem. Supply got impacted. And when supply got impacted, people lost jobs, and then demand side problem also arose. So it's both demand and supply side problem. So demand problem as rather supply as well, both sides problem is there. And in this pandemic, government has, of course, it has tried to increase the demand, but it has tried to implement a lot of supply side reforms that has already been discussed in detail in the last 2 years. And we have also discussed in the class. So supply side reforms, government has focused a lot, like disinvestment, like startups, atomic energy, space, labor laws. Of course, agriculture also it did, but then it had to repeal. So a lot of supply sector reforms government has done, taking this opportunity of recession and pandemic, right, which will give result to the Indian economy in the long term. Just give me 10-15 minutes, I will finish this analysis. Now, an important feature of the government's strategy is deregulation and process reform. Economic survey says that an important feature of the government's strategy in this pandemic is there are two ways, deregulation and process reforms. Two-way government has focused, deregulation and process. So deregulation means government has tried to move out of those sectors. Government has deregulated those sectors. Deregulation, under it will come disinvestment. Government tried to deregulate the agriculture sector also. So deregulation means government is allowing private sector. In coal sector, government allowed private sector. So deregulation means disinvestment, privatization, where government will now not be present. That is called deregulation. So government is has focused on deregulation also, and government has focused on process reforms also. Process reform means where government's presence will be required, but government has smoothened that process. For example, tax filing. For example, voluntary liquidation. For example, electronic government portal for purchase or procurement of goods. So deregulation and process reforms, both government has focused. In deregulation, government has exited that sector, it has allowed private sector. In process reforms, government's presence is required, but government has improved the processes so that people find it easier to do business, either ease of doing business or taking approvals or filing tax returns, these things. So process reform and deregulation, these are the two ways on which government has focused in this area. Then just one very important point, a particular strategy has been discussed, barbell strategy. This is quite important, so you must understand this. So this survey says that during the COVID period in the last 2 years, to move the economy out of this COVID period, government has followed a barbell strategy. It's basically used in finance, and this strategy uses two extreme ends. This strategy uses two extreme ends. On one side, it tries to handle the extreme risks. On one side, it tries to handle the risks, major risks, and on the other side, it tries to get the feedback from the economy, and it keeps on modifying its strategy. See, there are two, let me first tell you about waterfall model and agile model. What's the difference between waterfall? It has been discussed in the survey. See, waterfall model is basically what it says is that we know all the requirements in advance, that what to do for the economy, everything is clear, and we decide a strategy which is very rigid, and we follow that strategy regarding economic growth and other things. Opposite to waterfall model is agile framework. Agile framework, what it does? Agile framework says that we are not clear with the requirements, so we will not follow a strict path, a strict strategy. Rather, we will keep on taking the feedback, which is called high frequency indicators. We will keep on taking the data from the economy more frequently, and we will keep on changing our strategy. High frequency indicators means those data which comes on a weekly or monthly basis. For example, IIP, Index of Industrial Production, GST collection, core industries data, CPI data, all these data are high frequency indicators. So, agile framework, there is no predefined strategy, we keep on getting the data, real time data, and accordingly we modify ourselves. Waterfall model is we are clear with the requirements, follow a fixed strategy that was used to be done for the 5-year plan. So, rather than following a waterfall model in the pandemic period, we have followed a agile framework, right. Now, this agile framework is a part of barbell strategy. So, in barbell strategy, one thing we have followed the agile framework, that we have taken the real time data and keep on constantly modifying. You must have seen that government and RBI, they are watching these indicators very on run time basis, and then they are modifying their strategy regarding fiscal stimulus, monetary stimulus, subsidies, expenditure. And then on the other section, it has tried to handle those extreme risks by providing free food to the vulnerable, by providing free food cash transfers to the vulnerable. So, poor providing emergency, free it has done. For the poor people, it has provided free food, and for the poor industries, small industries, it has provided cheap availability of credit. So, barbell strategy it has followed, handling extreme risks. So, on one hand, government has provided relief to the vulnerable, it has protected them, vulnerable people, smaller industries, and on the other hand, it has taken runtime data feedback and constantly modified its strategy. This is called barbell strategy. So, this thing government has done in the pandemic period basically. Now, this is just a data which I think you can analyze on your own also. As I said that, see GST, this is monthly average GST collection. Even if GDP has decreased, this is monthly average. So, year wise average monthly gross GST collection. So, for example, 2021, 1 year, whatever is the average monthly collection. So, average monthly collection has consistently increased in the 5 years period, even if we faced pandemic here. And that is what I was saying, that our gross tax revenue has increased in the pandemic period. That is a very important, very good achievement in that. So, even if pandemic, the monthly average of GST, it's right now it's around 1.19 lakh. So, almost every year we are getting this. So, when GST was implemented, our monthly GST collection was this, and this GST is both center and state combined. Now, composition of taxes in the overall tax collection, you should know briefly that what's the share of the total collection. So, central government tax collection 21-22, this is for 21-22. So, 21-22 gross tax collection, as I discussed, have already discussed 25 lakh crore. So out of the 25 lakh crore, the highest tax is GST. Corporate tax and income tax are almost same, both same 25%, 25%. You should know this percentage. This is important. The three top tax collections are, and see here, I am saying this is centers. This is about center. So this is central GST, not states GST. So GST is the highest tax, then corporate and income tax both, and customs duty is 16. So this three, basically you should know that these are the three figures. Then let's discuss something about the debt. See, as I said that, now let me tell you again something about this economic survey. Survey talks about almost every topic which we have discussed in the 57 lectures on the PrepLadder economy course. That's why teaching economic survey is not a very good idea, let me honestly, frankly tell you. Because it touches upon almost every topic that has already been discussed in the class. What I have taught in the class, in the budget chapter or fiscal chapter, that is much more relevant than what is presented in the economic survey. Because this economic survey has touched upon almost every topic, but it has not discussed in detail. So that's why I always say that read the book, attend the class, and if there is something extra, only that thing you need to take up from the economic survey. And that thing I already cover in the book and the MCQ which I will be bringing. But still, important figures again. Central government debt. Now central government debt I have already discussed in the class in 1 hour lecture. Central government debt consists of 4 parts: internal debt, external debt, public account liabilities, and extra budgetary resources. Our total debt 2020-21 central government debt. Debt means at the end of the March 2021 it was 117 lakh crore. 117 lakh crore, which is quite higher. See, rather than that figure, this is more important. Debt to GDP ratio of center. If you remember, N.K. Singh committee had said that, what N.K. Singh committee had said? That central debt, it should be brought to 40%, and states debt, it should be brought to 20%, and combined debt, general debt, it should be brought to 60% by 24-25. So by 24-25. Rather than this, because of the pandemic, so it recommended in 2016-17, but now see what has happened. So from 40, so this is center's debt to GDP ratio. From 45.7, we had to, this is central's debt, we had to come to 40%, but rather than that, it has increased to 59.3%. How this 59.3% came? Our debt is this. GDP, you know, 2021, 198 lakh crore. So 117 lakh crore is the total debt of central government. GDP was 198 lakh crore. It will come around 59.3%. Debt has increased a lot. Regarding states debt, all these figures will be provided in the book also. Now regarding states debt, see here, state had to bring their debt to 20%, but states debt Major deficit and debt. Right side we have debt and left side we have deficit. So, state's debt, see here, it had to be brought to 20%. So, from here we had to come to 20%, but it has moved to 31%. So, center's debt 59.3%, state's debt in 2021 31.1%. %90.4%, and our target was 60%. This is general debt, general government debt as on 31st March 2021, last year. It's 90.4% of GDP. So, our GDP is 198 lakh crore, or 90% of that. And our target was 60%. This we had, and this 60% target of center and state debts combined, this is mentioned in the FRBM Act, and now all those acts needs to be amended. It will be amended basically. And state's deficit, you can see, last year it was 4.6, now this year it this year it is going to come down to 3.7%. So, center's deficit 6.9%, state's deficit 3.7%, more than 10%, general deficit more than 10%. See, external sector, merchandise, trade, and this, no need to go into as such a detail. Here I have just shown you the top 10 export commodities. Top 10 export commodities. You can just have a look, no need to teach anything here. Our top export is petroleum products. Now, you may be seeing that India is one of the major importer of petroleum products. India imports crude oil, processes it, and then it exports a lot. So, petroleum product is the top exporter, export commodity. And top 10 imports, you will see crude oil. Top 10, you will see import commodities, petroleum crude. There are other commodities that you can see, no need to go into all this detail. You can have a look, because this is important as such, and import destinations, China is we are mostly importing from China, UAE, these are trends, you can have a look. Yes, one important thing that I wanted to tell you is, trade in services, as I said, trade in goods has also recovered, trade in services has also recovered. Both have recovered from the pre-pandemic level. Net international investment position and net. What do you understand by net international investment position? What Indians are owning abroad assets and what foreigners are owning assets in India. Now, it is negative. Why negative? Because whatever Indian residents are owning abroad, that is less than what foreigners are owning in India. How it is calculated? There is a detailed way, and I may explain it in some other video, but how it is calculated? When a foreign person has purchased Reliance shares, that means they are owning some asset here. They are owning some asset here. So it will come into negative. When we are investing in some other country, it will come as positive. So Indian residents are owning assets abroad that is less as compared to what foreigners are owning assets in India. So net IIP, international investment position, is negative 11.3. But it is consistently improving. It is consistently improving in the last few years. So if you will see, net IIP is improving. This one. Absolute value, no need to go into that, but you should know that our international investment position is improving. That means we have started purchasing more assets, you can say, abroad. External debt. Now again, external debt I have discussed at length. External debt, earlier it was 570, now it has 593. The major reason of increase in India's external debt is SDR allocation. IMF has allocated special drawing rights worth around $17 billion. That has, so SDR allocation by IMF to Government of India, that acts as a debt on Government of India. And Government of India's debt is a part of India as a country debt. So India's debt, India's external debt has increased. India's external debt, earlier it used to be $570 billion. Now it has crossed. So because 17.6 billion of additional SDRs have been allocated to India, it has been allocated to all the countries in terms of their size of economy. India got this because there was a liquidity problem in the world over because of the pandemic. So IMF has allocated these SDRs. This has resulted in increase in debt. And you know that external debt, which currency has the highest denomination? It's the US dollar, or most of our debt, more than 50% of our debt, 51% is denominated in US dollar. Just give me 5 minutes, I will try to close it. See, this is a trend which is quite relevant for you. In the pandemic, so in the last 2 years, NBFC's credit to GDP ratio, this has increased 2.2 to 13.7. And see, this is a share. I am not saying that NBFC's credit increased. Of course, see, bank is also giving loan, NBFC is also giving loan. Every year their loan is increasing, that is fine. But if NBFC's share in loan is increasing, that means someone's share decreased. Why is this trend in the last 2 years? Of course, here also, this also year increased. But the reason for this increase is, in the last 2 years, just please listen carefully. In the last 2 years, pandemic, RBI has infused a lot of capital in the economy, a lot of money in the economy, right? RBI gave LTRO money to the banks. RBI has infused through other instruments also. It gave money to lend further. It has given money to banks, it has given money to NBFCs through LTRO option, through other capital infusion. Now what has happened that banks have been little bit shy in forwarding the loans because they were not willing to give loans to risky businesses in the pandemic period. So what has happened that the public which has deposits in the bank and the banks which have got the funds, a lot of funds bank has again kept with RBI at reverse repo rate. But NBFCs has lent more. Are you understanding? So banks got the funds, but rather than lending to the risky business, they have deposited at reverse repo rate. Even if reverse repo rate is much less than the repo rate, the difference is 0.65%, but still banks have diverted it to reverse repo rate deposit. And that is why the money multiplier. Money multiplier means money supply upon monetary base. So RBI printed the money, but rather than lending it, they deposited with the RBI. So money multiplier will increase or decrease? It has decreased in the last 2 years. Money multiplier has decreased because the banks have kept the funds with at the repo rate, at the reverse repo rate with the RBI itself. Right? And then this is a sectoral combination. So NBFC has given credit to various sectors. It just shows that which sector has got more credit. So if you will see sectoral distribution of NBFC's credit, and if you will see this, maximum credit has gone to industrial sector, then retail loans. So just as a information, you should know that NBFC's credit share has increased and maximum loan has gone to the industrial sector. This is just an information. A lot of other information also I will try to cover through the questions. Prices and inflation. In this chapter, chapter 5, there is a lot of monthly inflation data analysis. As such, it is of no use. The only one relevant analysis that I found in the entire chapter is in the last 7-8 months, WPI is above 10%, CPI is below 6%. There is a divergence which you have not generally see. There is huge divergence between WPI and CPI. I have already discussed this thing, but economic survey has again discussed this. So why there is a divergence between CPI and WPI in the last 8-9 months? The reasons they have given. First is, so let me just explain you about the reasons. In 2020, when pandemic hit, then because of the lockdowns and this, retail prices increased, but oil prices and other commodity market crashed. So wholesale prices, if you will see 2020, 2021, in 2020, WPI went down, but CPI went up, right? In 2021, CPI is normal, but since WPI went down here because of the base effect, here WPI we are seeing 10%, 11%, 12%. See, right now CPI is normal, 5%, 6%, slightly on a higher end. But because of base effect, here WPI was very less, 1%. So now even a little bit of higher inflation is showing that the WPI is very high. So one reason is base effect, low base in the preceding year. Second, I told you that retail inflation remained high. So retail inflation was higher here, so it has come down here. Now different weights, as I said, different weights in CPI and WPI. CPI has a much higher food weightage, 46%. WPI has much higher crude oil and other commodities weightage. Food inflation has come down, so CPI has come down. But WPI, because of the crude oil prices ruling high, OPEC did not increase the production to that extent. So crude oil price is high and it is leading to other prices increase. So WPI is increasing. Weight of fuel in CPI is less. So different weights, food inflation. And even if, government cut the excise duty on petroleum products. So retail prices came down. See, retail prices, retail inflation, you must understand that CPI includes indirect taxes, but WTI does not include indirect taxes. So when government cut indirect taxes, CPI come down, but there is no indirect tax on indirect. WPI is excluding the indirect taxes. So that impact did not come in WPI. So WPI is still high, CPI has come down. But the survey says that next year in 2022, we have already entered in 2022, the base effect will go away and slowly WPI should come down. Right? So 5 chapters analysis I did. The rest of the chapters like agriculture, industry, infrastructure. As such, let me honestly tell you that if you have read the syllabus, if you have read the book, attended the class, no need to read these chapters at all, because just repetitive information, too much of data of no use has been put there. If certain things you want to refer, then you can have a look, but otherwise not required if you have read the book and attended the class. So this was the overall analysis of budget and economic survey. At the last, I would like to tell you that just refer this PDF, and no need to as such follow the book and no need to follow the budget and economic survey detailed document. Keep continuing your preparation, solve MCQs, watch the lectures, read the book repeatedly, solve questions. If something is left, I will bring it through the questions. That will be much more relevant than mugging up that survey, right? And for any other issue, if there is any issue or some new issues comes up or any previous intricate issues, you let me know. I will again prepare a video, and that will be much better rather than discussing every line by line. Rest of the things you can understand on your own. So thank you so much for patiently listening this long lecture. Keep in touch. I will be doing each and everything whatever is relevant for you, whatever UPSC asks, not only budget and economic survey. So keep yourself connected, and whatever I am bringing in, just keep on following, because I am totally focusing on UPSC. I am not just focusing on one Niti Aayog document or one budget document. Whatever is relevant from any source, I am bringing it. Just keep it on following at PrepLadder. Thank you.